Well, good morning. It is indeed a blessing to be back here at Unity of Delray. I do believe that this campus here is probably the most beautiful Unity campus in the state of Florida. I think so anyway. So today we're going to be talking about your happiness GPS. Everybody uses GPS, even when we don't really need it. I've seen so many people who are on their way to some place that they go to constantly, but they'll turn on that GPS. It's like a security blanket. I don't know. I don't understand it myself. Because if you go there at least 3 times, you should know how to get there. But I've seen people do this, and their excuse is, well, I want to make sure that if there's an accident, I can go around it. Or if there's construction, I won't be delayed in traffic. They already know how to do it. They already know the way. Well, this is why we're talking about the happiness GPS here. Because there's so many things that come at us, bombarding us, that get in the way of our peace. We already know all of these things that we're going to be talking about today. We already have all of this information. But because we get distracted, we need to be reminded. Wayne Dyer left this planet about 5 years ago. He left the planet when his work was done. I'm an avid reader. Just a few months ago, I discovered a brand new book by Wayne Dyer. And my first thing was, well, did he channel it? What's going on? And then I read, as I started reading about it before I purchased it, this is a compilation of audio lessons that he left behind that was never before put in print. And the name of the book is called Happiness is the Way. So there's your GPS. Happiness is the way. Happiness is the way to peace. Well, our happiness GPS is already inside of us. Early in the first service, Reverend Laurie talked with the children about how God is inside, love is inside. Everything we really need is already inside. We come here with it, but we forget it. So we need that GPS to get us back on track and keep us on track and keep us in that space. Wayne Dyer said it this way: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. We know this. He said it, he's put it in books, and we know this. So we are responsible for looking at situations and seeing the Christ in them. We are responsible for looking at individual people and seeing the Christ in them. But we forget. And then sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes there's some people that it's kind of challenging to see the Christ in. But we know the Christ is there. So that GPS tells us, remember the Christ is in these people. Whether you agree with what they say or not. Whether they can see the Christ in themselves, we know the Christ is there. Eric Butterworth said, our job is not to set things right, but to see them right. That's not with our physical eyes, it's with that third eye. To see the truth, to see the Christ in everything and everyone. You know, we all have choices. We all have choices, and in unity we understand that heaven and hell are states of consciousness. There are times and circumstances and situations where people can be side by side experiencing the very same thing. And one is totally at peace and the other one is flipping around, having all kinds of anxiety attacks. And they don't recognize that when we worry, we block our blessings. When we start bouncing off the walls and jumping up and down like the little Tasmanian devil, we're getting in the way of the good that's coming to us. I like to use the example of, I'm a grandmother, and so I'm still watching sometimes Winnie the Pooh and those things. So I think about Eeyore and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. Those three characters. Eeyore can never see the good in anything. It's always going to rain. Winnie the Pooh was like, yeah, but the rain is wonderful because it waters the flowers and the plants. It feeds the earth. It feeds us. And Tigger is, woohoo, out there playing in the rain. Okay? So which one are we going to be? I like to think that I'm more like Winnie the Pooh. I can be at peace. There are times, of course, when it might get a little bit rattled from time to time, but always, always, always remember to go back to that space of peace. Always remember, God is in everything. God is always present. Always present. And the law of attraction, which is the third unity principle, teaches us very clearly what you think about, you bring about. So if you're an Eeyore, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get all of the stuff that you don't want because that's what you're thinking about. So if you're more like Winnie the Pooh, it's good. It's all good. I have a couple of examples, real life examples. One, my maternal grandmother lived and died in the same house she was raised in. And back then, early 20th century, nobody needed building permits. They needed another room, they tacked one on. So it started out as a log cabin. By the time I was born, it was white shingles on the exterior was very pretty. When my aunt made her transition, my grandmother took my cousin to live with her. They decided rather than repurpose a room, they needed to add another room. But there was a challenge of where to get the money. And my grandmother was like, we'll figure it out, we'll work it out. I'm not going to worry about it. This child is going to have her own room, and the rest of the house is not going to be disturbed. Well, one night, a fire started in one of the logs in the log cabin, in the original structure. Well, because the logs were so thick and heavy, that fire burned for 2 or 3 days before it came through the wall. And by that time, there was a lot of damage before the fire department could get there. With the insurance money that my grandmother got, not only did my cousin get a bedroom, she got a 2-bedroom suite. And I'll never, to this day, I will not understand why they did it, but they put in a separate staircase. So she had her 2-bedroom suite that was separate and apart from everything else in the house. When my grandmother transitioned in 2001, that house had 15 rooms and it started as a log cabin. They didn't need building permits, so they did what they did. This is what happens when you stay in that space of knowing that God is your source. Not too long ago, I had a situation arise where I had some expenses come up and I wasn't sure where the money was going to come from. And my first inclination was, okay, I don't have it. And the very next thing out of my mouth was, God is my source. It's not something that I asked for, but I got rear-ended. It was minimal damage to my car. Thank God nobody was hurt. But when I got the check from the other individual's auto insurance, it covered all of my expenses. That's what happens when you don't let worry get in the way of your blessings. That's what happens when you stay in that space of being at peace and claiming your happiness. Follow that happiness GPS to get you to where you need to be, you want to be. So what happens then? Who are you? What is your I am? Are you Eeyore or are you divine? I like to think that we are all divine. In fact, I know this, I claim this. Everybody on this planet is divine, blessing, not only in your own life, but to the lives of everyone you come into contact with. You are a blessing on this planet. You are a blessing. The mere fact that you are here at this point in time, this place, you are a blessing. Be the blessing that you know you are. Be the divine being that we know we are. You know, Charles Fillmore talks about 12 powers. He taught that we all come here blessed with 12 powers, and each one of us has those 12 powers, but every power does not manifest within each and every one of us the same way. But we all have them. Those powers, not in any particular order, are faith. Faith. My grandmother had faith, knowing that my cousin was going to have the bedroom that she needed. My grandmother's faith was so strong that I'm a recovering Catholic. I'm sure a lot of people in Unity are recovering Catholics. My grandmother was born and raised Catholic. She was such a good Catholic. Her faith was so strong. She got a medal from the Pope. And we buried it with her too. But she had that kind of faith. We all must have faith, knowing that whatever may manifest, all is well. It doesn't matter what it looks like. All is well. And then strength. Strength to go through whatever it is that comes our way. As we stand in our faith, yes, sometimes we do need strength to move through a challenge. And that's good. Because when we know that we know that we know that God is in the midst of all things, when a challenge comes our way, we have the faith and we stand and we move through it using that power of strength and understanding. Understanding that it doesn't matter. The things that we see with these physical eyes really don't matter. What truly matters is what's inside, what's in our hearts. Wisdom. Wisdom is a gift that we all have. And then will, that power of will, to stand firm in our conviction and know that whatever Holy Spirit tells us to do, we move through it and we do it. Order. Order. Everything is in divine order. And when we claim that, affirm that, live that, and truly know it with the core of our beings, we're good. It's as simple as that. We just need to remember all things are in divine order. And then we use the fact that we are co-creators with God, that third unity principle, and use our imaginations to create the world that we know we are entitled to. And then, of course, there's the power of elimination. And I like to use that line from the Kenny Rogers song. We got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. When things no longer serve our highest good, let it go. Let it go. When you hang on to things that don't serve us any longer, when we hang on to those things that really no longer serve a purpose, we end up on that television show, Hoarders. When we hang on to the emotional baggage, relationships that really are not fulfilling, that are sometimes even painful, but we hang on to it because that's what we're used to, we're still hoarding, just hoarding in a different way. The greatest power, the greatest gift is the gift of life. Because when we have that gift of life, we always, always, always have opportunities to deepen our awareness of the power and the presence of God, to deepen our awareness of our connection with our own divinity, to deepen that relationship within ourselves, that relationship of unconditional love. And love is the next power. If we don't love ourselves, it is impossible to love anybody else. Self-care and self-love are essential. The word love is in the Bible more than 630 times. More than 630 times is the word love. And 9 times in Scripture you will see the verse, love thy neighbor as yourself. The first time is in Scripture is actually in Leviticus. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I think the most moving example of that was after that shooting at the church in Charleston, South Carolina. With those families of the people whose lives were taken that day, they stood in the courtroom and they told that young man, each and every one of them said, I forgive you. They didn't do it for him. They did it for themselves. They'll never get over the pain of losing their loved ones. What they released themselves from was the pain of the anger that festers from inside and eats like a cancer. That's what they gained in forgiving that young man. There was a case in the Midwest someplace where some Amish children were killed. They did the same thing. Forgive. Forgiving someone who hurts you does not necessarily mean opening your heart and your home to them. It means freeing yourself. Open those doors of that prison of hatred and anger and pain you put yourself in by forgiving. That's what forgiveness is about. That's what it's for. And follow your bliss. Be at peace. Do those things that bring you peace, deep down inside peace. Whether it's playing golf, walking your beautiful labyrinth you have out here, going out to the beach to meditate, whatever it is, follow your own bliss and live and let live. Don't feel like it's necessary to control others because you're putting yourself in a prison. When you have a motivation to control other people, you're locking yourself down. Let it go. Live and let live. And as you love yourself and you love your neighbor, know that I love each and every one of you. Each and every one of you. Namaste.